Hey everybody, this is Damien from Studio Pro Musica once again. Today's video is going to be on adding chords to a 12-bar blues sequence. Now right off the bat I want to emphasize a lot of the tips, the techniques, and the concepts that I'm providing here in the course of these Building a Blues videos are not confined to blues sequences. You can use them in a wide variety of settings. Okay? The reason that I like to teach using the structure of a blues sequence, maybe there's three reasons. One, it's kind of the universal language. Most musicians know a 12-bar blues sequence, and if they don't know it chord for chord, measure for measure, at least they're familiar with it. Okay, so there's some common ground with other musicians there. Secondarily, that 12-bar sequence is just about the most common song form in all of modern Western music. And you look back everything from Elvis's Hound Dog to Stevie Ray Vaughan's Pride and Joy to Led Zeppelin's Rock and Roll, and literally hundreds of thousands of other songs are that 12-bar blues sequence. Okay, so it's just incredibly useful in that regard also. But finally, when you're learning stuff, it helps to have a structured setting in which to learn it. Okay, I like to teach with a sense of structure, and if you know, okay, I've got 4 measures, what can I do within these 4 measures? It makes it less random, and our brains just tend to process and retain that stuff a lot better. So I use the blues structure very often just as a teaching tool, but I want to emphasize, absolutely, you can take a lot of these ideas and apply them to rock, pop, country settings, jazz settings, whatever, that aren't strictly 12-bar blues. That said, today's video is going to be on adding chords to a 1-4-5 blues sequence. In previous videos, and I just want to say as an aside, if you've not watched our first video called Building a Blues, the First Steps, and then a subsequent video called Building a Blues, Blues in D, I strongly advise you do that before continuing with this video. There's a lot of really important foundational information in those videos, especially Building a Blues, the First Step. So I'm going to assume that you've watched those videos. Okay. Now what we're going to do, we're not going to worry about licks between the chords. We did that in Building a Blues, Blues in D. We're not going to worry about adding bass note passing tones. We did that in Blues in D as well. Now we're going to add chords. We're going to add sort of, you could call them passing chords. If you think of the structure of a blues, for example, the first 4 measures, we're just on that one chord. We'll be doing today's example in the key of D, so we're on that D chord for 4 measures. It can be a little static, it can be a little monotonous. So we're going to break things up a little bit by throwing in some other chords to create a sense of motion. What chords am I going to throw in? I'm actually going to look to a D minor pentatonic scale. A D minor pentatonic scale. And what notes do we have in a D minor pentatonic scale? Well, if I go to my box pattern D minor scale, I've got D, I've got F, I've got G, I've got A, I've got C. Again, D, F, G, A, C. I'm going to build a simple major triad off those notes: D major, F major, G major, A major, C major. And if you're kind of sitting back and saying, wait a minute, is that diatonic to the key? Does that fit? It's rock and roll. It's blues. This is the sound that we're used to hearing without attaching a real great deal of music theory to it. Just play a D chord, play an F chord, play a G chord, play an A chord, play a C chord. They're going to work. Okay? So again, think about those first 4 measures. I'm on a D chord. And again, as we discussed in our Blues in D video, there's a lot we can do. You know, we can kind of slide in and out of the chord. That kind of thing. We can do little pull-offs and hammer-on. But actually today what we're going to do is throw in some of those other chords. And just to get the ball rolling, there's really no thought process here. Just to get the ball rolling, I'm going to throw in maybe a C and a G chord. And I'm going to put them maybe in the second measure. You can see I'm kind of playing up the idea that all of this is kind of random in a sense. You know, you just play around with different ideas. So now my 12-bar blues, those first 4 measures, it's all a D chord really. Harmonically speaking, it's all a 1 chord. But now I'm going to throw in somewhere in the second measure a C chord and a G chord. Let's hear how that sounds and if it shakes up the sort of the monotony, you might say. Yeah, that worked. I'm on that D chord. I threw a little lick in there, but I also threw the C, G, D. Again, to hear it. And that worked, okay? So there's my first two measures. What am I going to do in the second measure? Well, I could honestly do the same thing again. That would work very well. Maybe just to add a sense of variety, I don't know, maybe I'm going to go C to A this time instead of C to G. Yeah, let's see how that sounds. Sounds good to me. And again, it's adding some motion. You're not really changing the blues structure. You're just adding a little bit of variety. So my first four measures are now looking something like D, and then C to G, and D, and then C to A. Well, now for measure number 5, I should find myself on the 4 chord. That's a G chord. Maybe I'm just going to bounce an F chord off the G chord. Remember, my D minor pentatonic gave us these different chord possibilities: D, F, G, A, C. So I've got that F chord available. When I go to the G chord, maybe I'll do a measure of G, and then a couple of beats of F and a couple of beats of G. Could I do it differently? Absolutely. But again, to get the ball rolling, I'm going to do something like... Sounds pretty good. Not fantastic, but pretty good. Back to the 1 chord we go, okay? Measure 7, we're back to the 1 chord, and we've got 2 measures of that 1 chord. Measure 7 and 8, we're back to the D chord. And this time, instead of going C to A or C to G, that's getting a little repetitive, maybe this time I'm going to go F to G, and that's kind of nice because that's going to lead me into measure 9 is my 5 chord, my A chord. So I'm going to go measure 7 and 8, D, F, G, A. Let's see how that sounds. Here's measure 7 leading into measure 9. And you can see how the F, G, following the musical alphabet, F, G leads pretty nicely to the A. So I'm on my 5 chord. I can just play the turnaround line. It's only 1 measure per chord. 5, 4, 1, 5. In this case, A, G, D, A. I can just play that pretty straight, A, G, D, A. I can add other stuff. I could do something like A to D back to A, G to C to G, returning to the D, and of course completing the sequence for the turnaround on the 5 chord on the A chord, okay? Let's see how all 12 measures sound together. What I'm going to do though is play the first 12 measures just strumming, kind of boring. So you can see that there's a need to liven it up a little bit by adding some extra chords. So I'm going to play 12 measures of just a very, very straight, not terribly imaginative 1, 4, 5. And the second time through, I'm going to add these different passing chords. Let's see what happens. Not too bad, but needs a little more. Here's the same sequence with these passing chords. Again, where did I get the chords? Major triads built off notes from the D minor pentatonic scale. Here we go. And there's a million other things you can do with that, okay? So take this idea. You don't always have to do 2 chords, of course. You can just do 1 chord. You can go, for that first couple of measures, let's say you can go D, And then just play a C, go back to the D. That can work too. Something like that. So experiment with this. Find your own combinations. Again, it's very helpful to work within the structure of a 1-4-5, but you can apply this anywhere. As always, thank you for watching. If you have comments, please leave them in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you. If you have any other specific questions, please feel free to drop me a direct message as well. And finally, if you have not subscribed yet to Studio Pro Musica, please do so. Thanks once again. Good luck and practice hard.